So when you're talking about core strength, you really have to break it up into two portions. One, core strength for stability. Two is core strength for mobility. The great thing is Pilates works on developing both. First, let's talk about stability. The idea is that you can move your legs or your arms, or your legs and arms, without the lower spine actually articulating through the vertebrae. What that does is that builds up the strength for people that have back issues or anything like that. The key is that it focuses more on the transverse abdominis and the multifidi for stabilization of that. And those are endurance muscles that will help people so that they can get through their days. The second would be the core mobility. Now, the core mobility is what most people end up using as they do their core training. It's going to use the rectus abdominis and the obliques to kind of create the movement through the spine. It's very good, but it's important that you actually articulate each of the vertebrae, and we'll talk about that in a second. So let's first talk about core stability. Go ahead and push the carriage out for me. The first thing you want to do is get your pelvis in a position where your spine is neutral. So I'm going to have her lift up for me, and then just set your butt down. Now you can kind of see how she's flatter here now. You can definitely see the difference between her waist, where it was tilted into the table a little bit before. Go ahead and come on down for me. So I'm looking for her spine to have its neutral curve. And what that does is now we can kind of work how we should be sitting and standing. So we're going to have her push the table out, go ahead and lengthen out, and then come back down so that the motion only comes from the legs. It doesn't come from the spine at all. Go ahead and push all the way out, and then come back down. Push all the way out, and come back down. And she's doing a great job. You can watch kind of on the pattern of her shirt to see that there's no motion there. Go ahead and take your hand up and grab that pad there for me. Push. You can see how this is really maintaining its stability. And that's important because the more she uses her legs, those involuntary muscles of the back are actually being used to stabilize. Now, a lot of times what happens is you have two things that people try to do. They'll try to push their back into the table. So come on down, pushing your back into the table for me. Good. And now try to maintain that. Now, what she's doing here is still maintaining stability, but she's allowing the table to actually assist her. So she's not using anything but the rectus abdominis on the front. And we'll get to that muscle here in a second. Push on out. Now, if she didn't have core stability and she came down, tucking under a little bit, and then pushing out, extending a little bit, and then coming down. Now, she has to focus on doing that because she's done a lot of training to get so she doesn't. So push on out and extend the back a little bit, and then come back down. And just let your back roll into the table as you come down, and push out. So as the movement happens. There you go. And what that does is now we've lost the stability. No longer she's using those small endurance muscles to stabilize. She's allowing the body just to kind of move and let the pressure of her legs go throughout her spine. That's a no bueno, okay? So we want to make sure that we keep that pelvis nice and stable and the lower spine stable so that we can build strength for stability. That's really key for those that have back issues. The second part was mobility. So the idea of mobility is that she can actually control each vertebrae to articulate. So if she started from the tail and to roll up, go ahead and round the pelvis under. So now we're pushing into the table. Great, keep coming, keep coming. And she did a really good job. Stop right there. And then roll back down. Think of rounding. You can really see how she curves each vertebrae one at a time. A lot of people use a cue of a pearl necklace being pulled off the table. So go ahead and round, coming up, pulling each pearl off of the table, stopping, and then rolling back down, putting each pearl back on the table. That's really, really good for core mobility. Now we switch the muscles. Now we're using the rectus abdominis and the oblique muscles to actually articulate each vertebrae. The key is that each vertebrae articulates. What happens a lot of times is people start moving too fast or not paying attention, and they actually work in a block. So they actually have 2 or 3 vertebrae that move together. Now what that does is that puts pressure on the vertebrae above and the vertebrae below with the pressure that would have went through the other 3 vertebrae. So if you saw that, she would probably go ahead and start to round up. And now just lift up. Right there, stop. And then come back down, and then back down. So you could definitely see it's not as rounding through the back, but it also kind of works in a segment of the spine. And again, that's going to cause a lot of the back issues, and that's why people, when they do abdominal exercises, they can run a risk of injuring their back. So the key to doing core work is deciding what you're trying to do first. If you're doing it for back pain, work on core stability. If you're working for overall fitness and the ability to have strength to do certain things, certain motion, then you're going to work on articulating and getting that strength. But you want to make sure you don't have pain when you do that.